Hey, Texas history class, 2053, section 003. Um, this is the first podcast of the fall 22 semester. It's kind of shocking to be back, isn't it? August 22nd seems early, but I think the whole state's back in class today, as far as I can tell. I know the public schools are K through 12. So the image I have in front of me is my favorite Texan, Beyonce, probably the greatest Texan of her generation, of course, from Houston. And yeah, I think hands down the greatest Texan of her generation. And this is a picture. It's gotten kind. It's like about 8 or 9 years old now. She's jumping in front of the Prada store, which is in West Texas near Marfa. It's a little bit east. It's not really a Prada store. It's a fake Prada store that some Swedish artist created right on, I think, Highway 90 there. It's out in the middle of friggin' nowhere. And she pulled off the road and took this wonderful picture. And I love this picture, and I think it's a great way to start the course because I think Texas is kind of a surprising place. I'm assuming that most of you in this class are Texans, but people outside of Texas don't really understand Texas that well. Texas is very, very controversial state in 2022 for all kinds of reasons. And so I don't know. I just like to kind of start with this image just to let you know that I'm approaching Texas history from a different angle than maybe a lot of other teachers that you've had, although some of you have had excellent Texas history teachers. I'm sure my kids had excellent Texas history teachers. And to kind of just shake you up, get you thinking about this place a little bit differently than is the norm. As we all know, Texas people are very proud of being Texans. I'm proud of being a Texan. I grew up in Austin. Um, as we know, also Texas was an independent nation, the only state to be an independent nation. It has the best shape of any state in the union. I love the shape of Texas. It's very diverse. That's one of the things that folks don't know about Texas. So in this course, we are going to study Texas history, and the focus of this course is the Spanish period, which begins technically in 1492 when Columbus stumbles onto the New World. But in Texas, it begins in the 1520s when a guy named Cabeza de Vaca, by mistake, lands in Galveston. And we're going to go up to about the 1880s with the suppression of the Comanche, forcing the Comanche out of Texas into Oklahoma, the closing of the range with barbed wire. Of course, that's the end of Reconstruction as well. So that's the period that I'm going to focus on in this course. That period between, I would say, the 1520s all the way up to the 1880s. And what I'm trying to get across in this course, as I said earlier, the diversity of Texas, the story of Texas that's often not told, especially pre-1836 Texas, which is the Spanish period, the invention of cattle ranching in Texas, which is from the Spanish period, slavery in Texas, the rise of slavery in Texas up until the end of the Civil War, June 19th, 1865, the famous Juneteenth, when African Americans in Texas heard that the Emancipation Proclamation had been signed and that they gained their freedom. June 19th now is a federal holiday, but it started in Texas. And I want to stop for a second and just discuss the issue of slavery for a little bit. It's very contentious. A lot of folks want to pretend that slavery wasn't such a bad thing, that it's something that doesn't need to be talked about. Why should we make students feel bad about the past? Oh, they're so delicate. If you don't want to know about the past, and if you're scared about learning about slavery, in the history of slavery, drop the course and just take somebody else's course. Although I'm sure all my colleagues will teach you about slavery too. By 1860, 1 out of 3 Texans was African American, and 1 out of 3 Texans was a slave. I think that's pretty doggone important to talk about that 1 out of 3 Texans. And also the involvement of slaves in the development of cotton production, which is what the economy of Texas was for a good bit of the 19th century. So anything I talk about when I talk about slavery, I will have evidence to back it up. I'm just not going to sit and rant and rave about the issue of slavery. I'm going to present you with evidence about the significance of slavery in Texas during this period and let you judge for yourself. Okay? So that's my promise to you. Things that I talk about when I talk about slavery, I will have backed up with primary evidence that you can double check yourself. Also, this course will talk a lot about the Comanche. Actually, we'll probably talk about the Comanche more than we even talk about slaves, because the Comanche dominated Texas from basically the 1720s all the way up until the 1870s, especially the area west and north of here. So we're going to talk a lot about the Comanche Empire. There was a rival empire in Texas to the U.S. empire. So we're going to talk a lot about the Comanche as well. It's a fascinating story. And the Comancheria, the homeland of the Comanche, stretched all the way basically to where Six Flags Over Texas is. I'm actually looking at 1604 now from my office. It stretched all the way down into this area of the world. So we're going to talk about the Comanche. We're also going to talk about my ancestors. My ancestors, I'm a white guy, grew up in Austin, went to UT Austin, then I went off to New York University for my PhD. We're going to talk about my ancestors as well. Folks that got here in the 1830s, small farmers, cotton farmers. My daughter-in-law, her family got here in the 1830s. Her family owned 15,000 acres on the Brazos River outside of College Station. So we'll also talk about folks like me as well. And we'll also talk about Tejanos, the history of the Tejano community in Texas, Texas Mexicans. That's what I'm using. There's a lot of words that you can use to identify that group. For a while there, people are saying Latinx, but everyone hates Latinx, especially Latinos, apparently. So we're gonna talk about the history of Latinos in Texas as well. So we're gonna talk about what I think is the biggest secret of Texas, which is its incredible diversity. And it's a state that I really love. I'm very proud of Texas. I'm very proud to be from Texas. When I went to school in New York, people knew I was from Texas within 10 minutes of meeting me. But I'm not uncritical of Texas either, or of the past. But let me just say once again, the issues that I bring up, the discussions that I bring up are going to be backed by empirical data. It going to be backed up by facts that you can check yourself. I hate professors that just get up and harangue students with their own politics without backing them up with any kind of evidence. I think that's really crappy teaching, honestly. So things that I talk about, I'll be able to back it up. So I work hard to make this course interesting. I work hard to make it lively. I work hard to bring to you the genuinely fascinating history of Texas. And the last thing I'll say is that I know maybe a lot of you don't care about history or hate history, really. I hate history. That's fine. You can hate. My kids hate history. But you may hate history, but history cares about you. Every second of your life is affected by the past. You don't live 1 second where you live outside the past. So if I can give you a sense in this course of the significance of the past without bogging you down in too many facts and dates, which I know is what people hate about history, I don't blame them. I try to make this course a story, a narrative that the past becomes very dramatic. So I work hard, and honestly, I'm pretty darn successful at that, and I have been for a long time. So in the next couple of podcasts, I'm going to talk about the syllabus.